Cheers.
That's right.
Cheers, team.
Definitely got to prepare for this one.
Before we begin tonight's episode of the Podcast Club, a cordial cheers to everybody.
Yes.
Cheers.
Drink 'em if you
I'm
got 'em.
drinking water because it's hot. And
I was going to say, it's not
February
January
now,
anymore.
right?
I'm
I know.
out of wine.
Oh, dang.
That's better.
Primarily,
Cheers.
that's the reason.
You need to step away for a minute.
I know. So if I disappear, that's probably why.
Hey, is your light on? Your nice new light?
It is, but I was really sweaty, so I didn't want to
okay.
aim it at me too much. But I think I've.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, but now you can see how ridiculous. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it on the whole like mysterious
Molly. Come
vibe.
on.
I think you know what I'm saying? I got
You're the
that
only
fresh from the
good-looking one among us.
airport hair.
Oh, yeah. Did you make it back?
Well, I just drove to the airport, but
Oh, okay.
driving to the airport in Costa Rica like involves crossing like a river and driving on the monkey trail where you almost die at least 3 times. So like
We need to put links to those videos in the show notes on Facebook that you posted. It's
like
pretty
literally,
crazy.
yeah, no, literally, you're like, I'm gonna. And then the worst part about making videos is that it increases your chances of dying by like 80% on an already like very deadly road. So I don't do a lot of those videos anymore. But you actually have to cross a river, which is cool.
Yeah. Crazy. And you're buying a house.
We
Can we say that publicly?
can.
Yeah. That's killer, man. That's
killer.
Crazy.
Land.
Yeah.
What?
And
The earth.
Dude,
you
and-
own the earth.
And
the
not
most
just that,
envious plot. It's like
it's
something out of a movie.
it is out of a movie. It's got hydrangeas the size of my head.
Whoa.
It has a pineapple tree, a papaya tree, and banana trees.
Nice.
When the zombie apocalypse comes, we're all coming, Molly.
Well, I'm gonna need to grow some weed too and make that happen.
Grow some weed and build a fence, because when it all goes down, we're coming to your place.
Seriously, all you need is a boat.
It'll take a minute, but we could walk. We could get there.
You could.
From here.
You could. It'll take a lot of minutes.
It'll take a lot of.
That's right.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
You know.
That's right.
Yeah, man. Super pumped about it, man. It's just everything just grows there because it rains once a day, and so you know, and so you just everything you're like, oh, that's a papaya tree, like it's you know. Like I bought a plant recently, well, a few months ago, like an Easter lily from wherever I buy plants from, and I was sitting on the porch one day and I was looking at the plant. And I was like, there's something growing out of that plant. There's another plant growing out of the plant. And so I downloaded that Google Picture It app and I aimed it at it. And there was a papaya tree growing out of my Easter lily.
That's crazy.
You ever just gotten a free papaya tree at the store? You know?
Only in Costa Rica.
I love papaya. Papaya smoothies.
Where papayas, but papayas don't just grow on trees; they grow on other
They
trees.
grow inside of other potted plants, apparently. How did that even happen? But you know where that papaya tree is going? Right now, it's gotten about 4 feet tall because I unpotted it from the other and gave it its own home.
That's
And
right.
so now it's about 4 feet tall, and I'm going to bring it to the new house.
Nice.
Awesome.
Plant it
So
right near the other one.
That's right. So my free
Have a
and
grove.
papaya trees are super cool looking. They grow. They look like 5G towers. I'm just kidding.
Yep.
That's for all. That's just preparing us for the Joe Rogan conversation. I'm just lubing the track. You know what I'm saying? Let's do the 5G, baby. But yeah, they grow. They look very different than a regular tree. But so they look super. They look like something that'd be growing in like Jordan or like the Middle East or something. Like they're a very unique shaped leaf in a very weird structured tree.
Tall and
All
skinny.
people that sign up for Molly's professional consulting courses will get a free papaya grown on her personal
That's right.
That's
I will
right.
take pictures of it.
from her personal trees.
You can sponsor a papaya like how people buy stars for their kids. Hey, if you're enough of a jackass to buy a star for your kid, you should also sponsor a papaya.
You can sell NFTs that people will own a bit of your papaya tree until you eat them, and then you'll send them the pit that they can grow their own papaya tree.
There you go.
Inception.
Boom. Papaya NFTs.
Love it.
That's the future.
Papaya coin.
Papaya. Seriously though. Wow. But yeah, crazy. I'm super excited. Well, we'll have to do a podcast club live show from the crib
From the ranch.
Yeah.
in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
acre and a half. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
That's silly.
Acre and a
That's-
half.
That's like 5 times what I have. In
That's like
I
a
know.
ton of land.
I don't even want to tell you guys what I'm paying for it, but I will tell you this. I couldn't get a parking space in Washington, D.C. for the
Right?
amount of money that I'm going to pay for that whole ass beautiful paradise looking crazy plot of land with a beautiful house on
Damn
it.
you to hell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Damn you to hell.
Okay.
How's the internet though? How's the internet?
Fantastic.
Good.
Yes, I'm going to pay
important
$200 a month for it, and I don't care.
Right.
That's it. That's your like number one business expense.
That's right. You
For like
gotta have the
50
internet.
MIPS or whatever it is. I don't know.
I don't know what that means.
Me neither.
It sounds important.
But I'll pay for it.
Well, we've had our nice
Preamble.
to-dos and our cordials here.
Let's get to smacking. I'm just
Ding 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 ding.
Round one.
Round one.
Hold on, let me get my chair.
Round one.
We need a card girl. I'll be the card girl.
I guess that's me, right? These guys.
Yeah, Adam, you didn't want to talk about this.
Yeah.
No, well,
Well, we got to talk about it. We got to talk.
I think we're all going to agree. I think by the end,
Yes,
All right.
I think
let's
so.
go.
I really do, because I think we're all protectors of free speech, and so I think it's
Let's
all
tell-
about how you
let's-
skin this cat. So
Right.
Let's tell the world what we're talking about.
Yes.
Joe Rogan versus the Volcano.
Today is February 1st, 2022, and we're beginning the great Joe Rogan debate.
The Spotify.
The Spotify.
That's not originally mine.
Oh,
I
well,
stole it
damn
from
it.
But we're saying it is.
All right, it is now. Poor man's copyright.
It's
I think
now.
Evo Terra said it in his thing. But he may
Oh,
have stolen it from
All
somebody.
right, we like Evo.
Yeah.
We like Evo. That's fine.
He is great. All right,
All right,
so
pose the question.
Yes.
Go for it.
what is the question? Well, I mean,
No one said go.
all right. Well, here's the great debate, right? Joe Rogan versus Willie Nelson. Wait, no. Neil Young. Which
Neil
one
Young.
of these old bastards was it? Was it the racist one who called black people by horrible things, or was it the one who was hanging out with Trump? Which old white guy was it? Oh, Neil Young. Yeah, that one. He took his music off Spotify.
Yep.
So there's that.
Because of his feelings that Joe Rogan is spreading misinformation about COVID.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
the topic at hand.
Well,
Yes.
I guess the topic, right? The bigger topic is like freedom of speech and censorship.
Oh, what is
and
Spotify's obligation
Spotify
to what is Spotify's obligation as a medium that allows Joe Rogan to portray this message? What is their obligation to the truth? It's the same conversation that Facebook had to do a while ago with all the news and
everything.
before, everything else, and
When all
Twitter
the platforms are
all the
doing,
platforms. They're all-
they're blocking posts.
Spotify's
they're
just the one this
giving
week, so-
notifications.
right.
And so it's time for It's Spotify's turn.
Mhm.
Well, I will say this. I do know that my crazy 22 prediction is getting truer and truer every
It
day.
is.
So I am hyped when I see Spotify and hot water, because like we thought it was all a joke like 3 weeks ago, but look at my shit coming true more and more every day.
It's recorded. You can check out the other episode.
Yeah.
And we're only a month
It's
in.
out there.
How much is
Only
the
a-
stock gone down?
Dude,
like the
$4
stock
billion,
tanked.
but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm only right most of the time, so it's cool. I'm just kidding. But no, how crazy. It's really crazy. It's really crazy. So
It is.
here's the thing, right? So this is my knee-jerk reaction to all of this is, and it's always going to be in defense of women. I'm just annoyed. It just feels like virtue signaling to me when like everyone's like, oh, we're pulling our stuff up because Joe Rogan said something we don't like. Well, Spotify is a platform full of like rapists and pedophiles, and like R. Kelly, who's like currently in jail, is still making money off of his music on Spotify. And like that's what this is, right? This is all about Spotify making money, and they don't have an obligation to do anything because they're not public officials, and neither is Joe Rogan, and they're not under the same rules, right? And so of course they're going to make money, just like they make money off of R. Kelly, just like they make money off of, I don't know, 70% of the music business probably that has some sort of like, okay,
But, you
right?
know, so does Apple, so does Google. Like
Yep.
like they all do, right? Like it's information, it's out there.
And what do they have to gain? Advertising. And so Joe Rogan's leg up is that he creates a 4-hour album every day, every week that Spotify can put ads on that most people are going to listen to. And if Neil Young started producing 4-hour albums every Friday that they could slap a bunch of ads on, they probably would have fought a little harder to keep him on there. But the reality is Joe Rogan is creating more possible revenue streams for Spotify than anybody else. So the $100 million that they spent to get him is peanuts. And it's whatever. Also has nothing to do with this greater conversation. I'm just on a tangent right now.
Well, it's part of there's so many interesting facets to this though. And that's where my mind went was the money, the fact that Joe is the new, like, I feel like it's the future bread and butter for Spotify because that's where, and you disagreed with me because the music is such a huge part of the platform. That's where all their subscribers are there for. But the podcast advertising there is where they're in the future. That's where they're going to make their most money compared to the subscriptions. I feel like.
Question. May I ask a question?
Yes.
Joe Rogan's still on YouTube.
Yeah.
But YouTube has pulled a lot of his episodes.
Do they really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I thought they pulled him because of Spotify. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
A lot of it, like they pulled the Alex Jones stuff. They pulled a lot of the stuff that's just, wrong.
Well, and
like
so here's my thing, right? Like to me, it feels a lot like Dave Chappelle, or like let's insert like Howard Stern into the mix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't the same woke era. Like, and forgive me, Howard Stern, if you're still on the radio, but I'm just saying, like, when he was
he is, I think.
Okay, when he was super prime time, though, like nobody's like expecting him to be like fair journalism. He's got like fucking strippers and shit, like. Joe Rogan is in the same boat to me. And like, I don't think Joe Rogan himself is pushing that content. And he has conversations with lots of different people. And he also had conversations with like Biden's people and like, immunologists and stuff. And like, I just feel like, and Joe Rogan put out a video that was like, hey, sometimes we think things is misinformation, but then 6 months later we find out it's true, right? And he's got some points there. And like, who gets to decide it's misinformation? Am I pro putting out information that, prevents people from wanting to get vaccinated? No, definitely not. I'm not pro Joe Rogan. I'm just like, where's the line? Who decides that what he's putting out is misinformation? And are we going off of headlines, or are we going off of what the content actually is? And like, I don't know, Joe Rogan consistently says, I'm a guy who made people eat horse brains and cow shit on television, and I'm a stand-up comedian, so none of you should ever listen to me at all about any opinion I have about anything because I'm an idiot. And he has said that repeatedly. And so I just feel like at some point, when do you believe him?
That's part of the problem, though, is that there are way too many people that do. Like, he's telling people, the biggest offense that people, that including me, take offense with is he is saying that young people don't need to take the vaccine. And that potentially is getting people killed. It may not kill the young people, but they may spread it to their grandparents. So anything, I'm totally with you with the, like, censorship and all that stuff, and this is beyond that because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and there are close to 1 million Americans that have died. And so I am like, as much as I don't respect Neil Young because he is a total jerk, and like I got to tell this quick side story. We opened for him in Hong Kong. We did a one-off from Japan to Hong Kong when I was out with Michelle Branch, and his son was the stage manager. And his son did not have nice things to say about his own father. That tells you the type of person Neil Young is. But he is the one that initiated this discussion. And that's why I appreciate it, because he taking a stand, and granted, he also has a beef with Spotify because of his hang up on the file fidelity stuff, which is complete horse manure. And whatever. But so I feel like there's multiple motivations on Neil's side. But regardless, I'm glad that somebody that matters, that could have an impact in some way that causes everybody to go, hey, whoa, something's going on here. is causing us to talk about this, because this needs to be talked about. Yes, Joe Rogan presents himself as a balanced person. He is not. He is not a balanced opinion person. Like look at
Molly.
look at the
Somehow.
guests. Look
There's
at the
violence.
guests he has on. So
I mean, he's recorded like 6,000 episodes or something, like literally. So here's the thing. He's not an elected official.
right, but
I don't
he
think
has
he has any
millions.
responsibility to anything.
He doesn't. This is the core of the issue. Joe Rogan does not have responsibility. Who has responsibility is Spotify. Spotify has bankrolled his show, and they are the ones that are promoting this information that the scientific community says is not helpful to ending the pandemic.
Yeah, but
And-
I'm not going to get to opinions yet, but like, you got Fox News is out there.
right.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
All
they're
that
on
CNN.
they're on not cable news, that is public access
Right.
news, radio waves. And so do the antennas that distribute these things have an obligation? Do the people that maintain the antennas have an obligation to churn that
Exactly.
shit off?
Where does it
Now-
end?
Which is the federal government.
So like
You would think they would, but the Congress.
there's a layer to it that makes it very complex.
Yes, absolutely.
I think I in all honesty, I have never watched a Joe Rogan experience in its entirety because I just don't have a million
I can't
hours
take
to
it.
watch it. I've been curious, but I have not. Sometimes you watch these little clips and you laugh, and sometimes you're like, oh, that's an interesting thing. Or he talks about aliens, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting that you're talking about this out there like they are real, and maybe they are. I don't know. But then when it comes to this, look,
I'm just going to say this publicly too. He is not a smart person.
he may
I don't
not
think
be,
he
but
ever
he
claimed
asks
to be,
interesting.
though.
He pretends
He
to
brings
be.
out a wide variety of people onto these things and exposes a bazillion people to all kinds of crazy ass shit, and it's entertainment, at its core. Whether that is an episode of any like TV shows do this shit too. You know what I mean? Like some people look up. Okay,
Our
Dexter's about
government.
Dexter. Dexter is about a serial killer. You know what I mean? And he's the hero. Like, is that a good thing? Do we idolize the hero who
Okay,
kills?
this is
I'm
not.
just saying.
You guys are comparing this to stuff that
Now,
like,
now, let me roll back for 1 second. I very much think that the vaccinations are a phenomenally good thing, and everybody should be
Same.
vaccinated.
Same.
100%, 100 million %.
Same.
At my company, we are doing a vax or test policy. Everybody either must report that they are vaccinated, and if you are not vaccinated, which is your own personal choice, then you must tell us every single week that you have tested negative without question, every single week. And if you don't send in your test before you come into work, you must go home. That's how we're approaching it. Regardless of whether the OSHA says you must or whatever. And I've had people say, OSHA says you don't have to do this yet. And I said, that's fine. We are.
Yeah.
Because we think this is
and it's
proper.
your company. Yeah.
And it's a private company, and we can do as we please. This is not a requirement. You can leave. I 100%, you have your own right to do what you please to do. That is totally within your right. But this is what we believe is right to do to protect everybody.
And
similarly-
I don't have a brick and mortar, but I am also very pro-vax. Just so that's out in the
Right,
atmosphere.
right.
I am
We
not.
all are.
I don't.
I'm more talking, right. We're
Right.
talking about the
It's public health risk that's at stake
but we're
here. I
also
feel like.
talking about, I mean, I don't, well,
Diet pills are a public health. I mean, like,
Yeah.
bacon
But
causes cancer. Alcohol
here's the
causes
thing.
cancer.
Here's the thing, though. It is because Spotify is a private company. I have no problem with them continuing to push Joe Rogan's stuff. Like they choose to do that. But here is my struggle, and I have struggled with this not just with what products I use. I don't use Spotify. I never have because I've never appreciated
neither.
how much they skimp out on taking care of musicians. They do not pay musicians well for the amount of effort that goes into that audio content. I am glad they're buying into podcasting because that's my business now, and I respect them for that. But there are clients of mine that I have chosen to stop working with. There are jobs I have not taken because of stances that they make. And this is a stance that Spotify is taking with Joe Rogan to help him promote the stuff wherever you stand on if he's actually promoting anti-vax stuff or whatever. People are believing it, and it needs to at least have a warning label on it, just like a pack of cigarettes. Like, this is not necessarily true.
That's what Facebook, anything that mentions the word COVID or
Instagram,
both Twitter and right? They all say that.
Right. And Spotify is going to start doing that now, thanks to Neil Young. So,
and Joe Rogan said that like he's totally cool with that. He has no problem with that, and he would appreciate that happening, and that he'll put more effort into like making sure the diversity is there, and he's following up with differing opinions right away.
The way that it bothers me, and the reason why I really do not like his show so much, is there are so many bros out there that are, and like I've heard this from multiple women friends, especially here in the South, where they are using what they have heard on Joe Rogan's podcasts with these doctors that have been banned from Facebook and other social media platforms because of the lies they're telling about COVID and vaccines. They are regurgitating the stuff they hear on Joe Rogan. They're taking those sound bites. And whether or not Joe Rogan's intent is to spread that information, this is what's happening. And he, in my opinion, should do a better job of quantifying that. But if he doesn't, that's up to him. That's, you know,
the thing about people taking the soundbite and misconstruing it is tough because that happens with everything, right? Like you can take the headline and read the headline and not read the substance, and so like that's very hard to blame Joe Rogan.
But with great power comes great responsibility. You know,
fair, but
he's got millions of listeners. He is not a good role model.
No one is saying that he is.
4 years listening to our president say shit like "grab her by the pussy," and so like honestly, I'm just like I don't know, man. Like
President
I just
of
wish
the
people
United
got
States
this mad
of
about
America.
women being like talked about, and like I you know like. It
they are
just
cut
feels
from
like
the same cloth.
Selective morality to me, honestly. You know, it's like it feels like bullshit to me. You know,
but it's the same crowd listening and regurgitating stuff.
You have half the politicians. You got a lot of things out there when the sound bites come out and they put them on the news.
Jewish space lasers.
But you got one news station that spins it one way, and you got one news station that spins it another way.
Same
absolutely.
sound bite.
And so I think at its core, it's like the whole thing is. That's the problem with just the way we consume media and the way humanity takes sound bites instead of the depth of it.
Yes.
And you can't.
And considering the source and context and all that stuff.
Unfortunately, you can teach it in school, but you can't make sure that all people actually are well researched. And like the caveat that is underneath a news a little snippet says, by the way, this is 30 seconds of a full conversation where they actually say the opposite of this, but they said this one word, and so we're going to take that as it is.
Right.
That's it's impossible. I wish it was possible. Man, my life would be easier. Look, we can bring this back to podcasting for a second because let's take bring it back to a common theme we have here. Nice. We can bring it up to a common theme here. The entire podcasting community thinks that the Blue Yeti is a good microphone.
Yes.
And yet we cannot.
For that?
Let's say this.
We cannot insert text boxes underneath it that all say, by the way, this microphone sucks balls, but...
Well, we could, but
can I say this soundbite?
Yeah,
the Blue Yeti is the Joe Rogan of microphones.
Good night, everybody. Good night. Thank you. Debate over. Mic drop, and we're out. Cut it. That's it. That is awesome. That is a great statement.
I disagree. Because Joe Rogan has $100 million in the bank, and Yeti got...
Blue's got quite a bit.
They probably make a pretty penny on those microphones. It probably cost them 5 cents to get direct shipped from China.
Stupid logic. I want to hear it.
Anyway,
I like
awesome
Joe Rogan,
statement.
but I like old Joe Rogan. I haven't listened to a Joe Rogan podcast in like 4 years. So honestly, if I listen to him now, I
like Joe Rogan when he talks about aliens. I like him less when he talks about health.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just feel like you gotta also recognize that that's the same guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so like
he was an MMA fighter.
His brain's all fucking rattled. You know what I mean? Like, But I just think of it as bigger picture. And like, listen, I don't know. The more, you know what it really is. The less time I spend living in the United States, the less I am wound up about what should happen, because I feel like we were sold this lie. And we all played the game, and we played the rules, and we took the sacrifices, and we went to college, and we took the job, and we bet on security, and we always thought that the right thing would happen, but it just didn't. And then we watched Trump just break all the rules and say shit out loud, like, and we just keep getting bewildered by like how things are supposed to be. And I think that like I'm upset about everything too, and then the other side of me is like, I just also can't care anymore. And I feel like I don't know, man. When you start censoring people like Joe Rogan instead of really attacking the major issue, which is like a lack of education, and like maybe Spotify should be responsible for funding every United States education board with $200 million, and that's the real problem. I was just talking about this with my friend. We're all yelling at each other about fucking stupid shit, words and names and things. We should be focused on how we're treating each other, and we're fighting each other instead of the systems in place. And this just feels like another example of that. Like, fuck Joe Rogan, but the bigger picture is it's censorship. And who gets to decide what's information and what's misinformation? And who gets to decide what's real? And how do we know that the government, But
this is the most complicated conversation, because you say free speech, and you say, which again, like, yes, like, but then you have people that will go out and say that making people get vaccinated is like Nazi Germany, and then
right.
You're like, well,
right.
But they can say that, and they are they just deal with the
Not
consequences.
when they're government
stupid
officials, they shouldn't say that.
But like, where do you filter it? It's like what's the logic tree to? I'm not saying I'm saying F that shit, and
yeah.
Like,
but I think the
I mean?
filtering is they lose their jobs, they suffer in their real time, because the reality is freedom of speech covers that jerk. And that jerk is allowed to say that.
You let the population decide, right? But then you get into a January 6th situation.
But this is the thing with the First Amendment stuff.
Don't we live there?
That the First Amendment applies to the government. It does not apply to private businesses.
But Spotify is not making a statement. Spotify is just hosting the radio wave in which that statement is being delivered to people.
Right.
But it's not there. It's
radio.
not. Hold on. It's not Spotify's job to enforce the First Amendment. It's the United States government's job to enforce the First Amendment when it applies to stuff they have control over. They have control over how Spotify pays its taxes, how it operates its business, that sort of thing. They do not have license to censor. The government doesn't have license to censor Spotify's content. It is up to Spotify, and that to me is the point. That because Spotify chooses to allow this stuff to go unanswered, that is why I choose to not trust them as a company and not rely on them as a business. Now, I'm not removing my shows from there,
but you mentioned like relating this to R. Kelly, a convicted felon.
Still making money on Spotify right now.
Right.
And Apple Music and YouTube.
And it makes me sick every time I see his face.
And
James Brown, R. Kelly. Whatever. I'm not even going to start listing. That's terrible. Let me name some white people that did terrible stuff too.
I'm just saying devil's advocate here. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's out there, and it's like, it's... I'm not saying I agree, and I agree when I say like a song that you loved and it comes on, you're like, oh wow, this probably shouldn't be played right now.
Yeah,
it's and look, Joe Rogan's under fire because he has a bazillion listeners every single week. There's probably 1,000 other podcasts that are the same thing.
Yeah,
thousands of them.
Spotify is not paying them $100 million. And they are not producing their show. That's the difference. This is the difference.
They get paid even if it's minuscule.
From podcasts?
Don't they get paid through streams or no?
If the subscribers, but right now there is no indication that podcasting has increased their subscribers
You got
at all.
rappers, you got musicians, you got people talking about singers,
Yeah.
whoever it is, metal,
Right.
rap, electronic music, talking about all kinds of unsavory shit. And they get paid for streams, regardless of the content they
Joe
say
Rogan
explicit.
is
you know?
the flagship. Like he has become one of the faces of Spotify podcasting. So it says something that, like, he is basically speaking a lot for the company, whether they like it or not, just because of how much money they have. And it's the same with any of the big artists. Like, it's the same thing with the record label. You know, what does that say about the record label that R. Kelly, is signed to?
I mean,
So
It's the
Molly,
same thing.
I feel like it relates to that interaction you had with Gary Vee in 2020.
mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting exchange because what was it that there was a list published that was like, oh, Gary
Trump
Vee, who talks this
supporters.
way, has
VaynerMedia donated to
interacts
the
with-
Trump campaign.
he interacts with companies that directly support the Trump campaign, and his response was like,
VaynerMedia donated to the Trump campaign, and he's like, I'm not the only investor in VaynerMedia, so when one of the investors donates to Trump, it gets put under our thing. It wasn't
Right.
me directly.
But he's
Right.
the face of the organization, and it does reflect on him because he's partnering with those people to run his business that impacts a lot of people.
Yes, but what his response was, I hear you, but like you want to divest in everything that's corrupt, we'll close your bank account and turn off your
Right.
internet and close your cell phone account because
Exactly. And this is the problem that I struggle with daily. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to tell people how to think. This is the struggle that I'm having.
it's
There's-
a problem to discuss. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good to, just mention that it's the problem. I mean, you mentioned that the situation with having issues with how people manufacture goods in different countries and
Yep.
how labor laws and stuff like that.
Right.
Good luck not buying something that's ever touched China
Exactly.
or any other third world country that uses cheap labor to manufacture sneakers
Yep.
or microphones.
Yep.
You're hard pressed to find any microphone manufacturer on the planet that does not get a component from China that they need.
Exactly.
And good luck. So it's a very hard world to manage that conversation.
And that's how I wanted to tie this into what can we take away from this whole mess, Because yes, we can get all fired up and enter the argument, like we have already, but how does this impact us as podcasters? How does this impact us as business people? And for me, it is that thing of how do I choose? Where's that line when I want to decide whether or not I want to work with somebody because of who they've sponsored, what they posted on social media, all that stuff. And I struggle with that daily. If I want to have them as a guest on a podcast, or if I want, like when a client of mine, this is something I fear daily because I still work for one conservative podcast. When they have a specific guest on, when am I going to say I'm not editing this episode because I don't, agree with the content? So that's the thing that this whole experience is making me think about is who you're partnering with. And obviously all of us are going to disagree on something at some point, but it's figuring out what our values are, what's important to us. And as entrepreneurs, we need to do a better job because the big corporations have values, they have mission statements, all that stuff. So I feel like we probably need to do that for podcasts too, right? This would help us have a standard to go by that would help define that line if we set those values. And obviously they can change over the years, just like Joe Rogan's content has changed over the years as he's gotten older, so it's not like it's set in stone, but all this stuff has just made me think a lot about that. Like who am I choosing to partner with? And we disagree on whether or not we like Joe Rogan, but I'm still partnering with you guys because of all of the other stuff. Like so far, I feel like that's the one thing that we disagree on.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I don't necessarily like Joe Rogan, but what I like is free speech, and I don't like censorship. And I think that like it's a slippery slope, and like who gets to decide that? And as content creators, especially for myself, where my I'm focused on the democratization of information. That has been my go-to, slang for a hot minute. And listening is the revolution. And when you listen to people who don't look and sound and feel the same way as you, that's when the real growth happens. And so I'm here for all of it, as long as they're not an elected official. As
Right.
long as they're not in control of tax dollars. And like Joe
Right.
Rogan is not in control of either one of those things. So I don't really give a fuck what he wants to talk about. And I think that he should be protected to do so. And if Spotify wants to work with him and people don't like that, then don't use Spotify. Use Tidal or iHeartRadio or whatever. Like, I
that's
just
exactly-
can't.
yeah.
As a woman who's constantly reminded that our value almost doesn't matter and that we're just totally like, we just have to swallow the fact that we're surrounded by people who are rapists and pedophiles and all that. Like, for me, it's like, you know what I mean? It just sort of reminds me of how important we are, because nobody got their panties in a bunch about boycotting anybody. And there's a whole bunch of pedophiles and rapists and predators on that site. Nobody got all upset about it before, but now all of a sudden it matters. It feels like performative. It feels like moral selectivity. And it feels like, once again, women are just being reminded that we're just keep getting pushed back to the, you know what I mean? Like, so it's
Preach.
okay for rapists to be on Spotify, but it's not okay for Joe Rogan, a guy who like, I mean, Joe Rogan, like, as far as we know, at least hasn't raped anybody. Like, he's not the president. So, like, I just don't care what he says at all. And I think there's always going to be stupid people. Like my grandma used to say, for every crooked pot, there's a crooked lid. And I think Joe Rogan got a whole lead on the market full of crooked lids. You know what I mean? So I just don't think it matters, because that anti-vax misinformation can be found in a million other places too. So it's not like Joe Rogan is the only, he doesn't have the NFT of every fucking COVID misinformation thing out there. And he's also interviewed amazing people who are like not anti-vax. So it's like, okay, well, how's that work?
That's another, what you said about the whole women thing and the other thing, that's something else, like I mentioned before, I struggle with. And that's the other thing I'm really grateful about this whole thing, that you brought that up. And this presents the opportunity for us to talk louder about that problem, which is not directly related to it. But why the hell are their record labels still choosing to work with R. Kelly? Why
Money.
Exactly.
That's right.
And we're putting profit above people.
But have you been to America?
I know.
But
that's
like
the
it
American
goes. Look, it goes. You could look at any of the. You could look at Google. You can look at Amazon. You can look at
Amazon.
Facebook.
Yeah.
All these companies that are always under fire about they have a platform that's so big that they have a moral responsibility to do these things. Amazon, Amazon's under fire because they make products that they see as being extremely profitable, and so they make their own clone of the product and sell
off.
it better.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's been going on for a trillion bazillion years, and it's business. And you know what you did? You decided to sell on Amazon's platform.
Yes.
You could have sold it on your own website and not done that and done it your own way, and Amazon would not have your data. But you took the easy way, and you decided to sell it through Amazon and take benefit of their traffic that they put money behind on the platform they built. And so now they saw that it sells really well, and so they are also going to make something that competes with you, and you can do better and market better than them or not. And so, like, it's
which who can market better than Amazon?
Who's at fault there? You could have sold it yourself. You know what I mean? Do I believe that the action that Amazon does is nefarious? I do. I think that using data that they're privy to make something better at a lower cost and using their buying power is not. It's unsavory, but is it worth shutting them down for?
Well,
I could do that. I can do it on eBay. I can go find what people sell on eBay.
This is a good example.
I can make something better, and I can do it cheaper, and if I'm going to put the money behind it and fucking do it,
But a good example of this is a friend of mine. I'm sure you're, Adam, familiar with Pedal Train.
Mm-hmm.
My friend, who I used to tour with DC Talk, started that in his garage. He went to China. He found a manufacturing place to make it. It's just a metal grid to put your pedals on, and he did his best to patent stuff. I mean, it's not super complicated, But Guitar Center started ripping him off, and he chose to stop doing business with Guitar Center. And then Amazon. So Amazon was his main thing, but then also through his website. So he's fighting that retail fight that I'm sure you are as well. Trying to make a living with all of these guys that aren't playing fair, these large corporations that just aren't playing fair. And you know what? He ends up selling his business, and I don't blame him, because it's just too much
that's just
work.
life, man. That's
But
just
like-
life.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
You
saying.
take it on the flip side of it, and it's like,
That's what I'm saying.
Nothing lasts forever.
And that's where we need to be cautious. That's what I'm saying. Like, this whole thing has made me think hard about all of the stuff that we've talked about.
Well-
Not just about the free speech thing, not just about who we're partnering with, not just about competition or where we take our money from. All that, there's so many facets to this that we can learn from.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to have this opportunity to hang out with you guys and talk through this stuff, because I'm still processing it, and I'm still going to be processing it for years to come as the next thing comes out,
Right.
because it's not over. I'm sure there's going to be something else. Like, I sent you guys a link right before we started recording about Brene Brown's response, because she's on Spotify.
She's a stunter. I love Brene Brown. I read all her books, but she can just
Well, so
Stunter.
you need to read her Instagram post, because hers is the best response I've seen so far. Because she didn't say I am leaving Spotify, because they've paid her, I think somebody estimated $15 million, something like that, to put her show on there. So she's not Joe Rogan level, but she's still, but what she did is she
leaving Spotify because
No,
she
she's
get
not.
her pantsuit off and she
well,
can't
hold
leave
on.
Spotify.
Can I finish? Can I
Yes,
finish
yeah,
talking,
yeah.
please? But I really respect what she said, because she said that she decided not to release episodes, and she announced she wasn't releasing episodes that were scheduled to be released that people are expecting, because she wanted to stop and have a conversation. Now, I wish she had told people up front that what her motivations were and what she was doing. But of course, all the haters, all of the conservative dingbats that love to troll people online are saying, I'm burning all your books. I'm this and that. And it's like, well, you don't even know what she's doing. All she said is she's just not releasing anything this week. She might release, and she is releasing it. She's been having conversations. She's clarifying what we said.
But
What
no,
is
no, no, but
Minster
she says, I'm reading it right now. She says, I've had hundreds of comments across social media asking my opinion on the issue. I didn't know enough to comment, but I didn't want to drop new podcast episodes without responding to the question, so I decided to hold my podcast and learn more.
Yes.
No, see, I think what happened is she was like, yeah, that's messed up. I'm not going to, release any more episodes. And then, she's getting a bunch of backlash and she's like, oh, well, that just feels like backpedaling to me. And it's probably because the Spotify lawyers were like, oh, yeah, you're not going to drop any more episodes.
I respect her conviction, because I feel
But
like
she said she doesn't even have an opinion on it, and she couldn't even know enough to comment, but she knew enough to announce to the entire fucking world that she wasn't going to do anymore because she felt so strongly about the issue, but she doesn't even have a formulated thought yet. No, that's stunting for the gram, dude. That is straight stunting for the gram, because you don't even have an opinion about it.
This, to me, I relate to her because
I love Brene Brown.
Because I feel like this is, oh shit, I decided to put all my eggs in Spotify's basket, and did I make a wrong decision, and do I need to reevaluate this? That's what she's saying. And so she's evaluating and having a conversation with her business partner instead of making a rash decision and releasing publicly, fuck you guys, I'm out of here.
Her podcast has nothing to do with Spotify or any of that shit. It's about fucking courage and bravery and shit. And those
but they pay
episodes
her
are
for exclusive.
probably already recorded. And those podcasts wouldn't have anything to do about Joe Rogan. She was like just being reactive and saying, I'm not releasing any more episodes. And like now she's like, okay, well, I'm just covering my ass and I didn't know. And I feel like if you're going to make a public statement and say, I am not releasing this content because I have a stance on this, and then to say a couple days later, actually, I haven't formulated my stance yet, like, then why did you say
She never
anything?
said she has a stance. All she said is she's just not releasing any episodes. And that's where people jump to conclusions. And that's the other thing that I'm looking at here is how many of our audience members read from their own context between the lines. And so when we don't say something, that gives them license to make up whatever they want and put and that's what you're doing. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing.
I'm literally reading her social media post on Instagram.
But
I'm literally reading
you
it
did
verbatim.
misquote.
She says
you misquoted
she
the
said on
first thing.
January 29th, I posted across the social media that I would not be releasing any podcasts until further notice.
That's all she said, but you said because she didn't have a stance.
Said I didn't want to drop new podcasts without responding to the question, so I decided to hold my podcast and learn more.
Yes,
I'm not
exactly.
like, listen, we can agree to disagree. I love Brene Brown, but she fucked up right there. So
I disagree.
And there you have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that,
but this is healthy discussion.
I think that the whole thing is like, this is not the first time that there's been a hot button topic where someone's come out and said something very controversial on a publicly available platform to bazillions and trillions of people.
Yep.
And it's been responded to. I think it's just a continuing conversation, and one that there's really, like, obviously we've been around this for 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Like, there's no clean answer.
There is not.
You get into this world of like, well, where do you draw the line? Because then you get into shit like, look, you go back to the Holocaust shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, where's the line drawn to what's reasonable? Who's the arbiter of what's reasonable? Not. We all three have a fairly, straight arrow, like, moral center where we all believe that what's right is right and what's good is good. And I would trust any of you to determine what's right is what and what's good is good. But like, who's the person behind the scenes that decides what's right is right and what's good is good? That ends up being a very slippery slope if you decide that it's an individual or a company even. And even if you get into the world of like, decentralize this and we're all going to make the right decisions because it's going back to last week's podcast, which you should listen to, by the way. Tune into the podcast.tv.
bang.
That even in a decentralized world where the community has a say in what goes down, who's to say that the community is right?
Okay, so here's an example.
We voted Trump into president.
I didn't. But that is the core of the problem. You're exactly right. So here's a perfect example. I feel like that, like, outside of Rogan, if there was a podcast that all of a sudden Spotify started producing, imaginary podcast, and the person on that show started talking about how the Holocaust never happened,
they exist,
or it wasn't as big of a deal, would you appreciate there being a warning that some of the information in this podcast may not be factual? How would you expect the corporation that is funding that show to put it out there? How would you expect them to respond to that?
There's probably already a podcast out there that says it.
But it's not being paid $100 million.
No.
So should every black person like be upset with Hollywood and television for how they've portrayed black people? Like where,
yes.
like
books,
absolutely,
TV,
absolutely.
I think that the answer is that no one. I don't think humans are qualified to actually do this. I don't think that
You don't think humans can say, "Hold on, this did actually happen." You don't think that we can correct that the company that owns the process, that they can say there is stuff in here that is not true historically.
No. I would like to see that happen. I'm just saying that the conversation quickly becomes, well, who's to say that this did happen, this did happen, this did happen.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, it's a very hard thing
Slippery
to
slope, yeah.
where you draw.
But
the
it
line
needs
is
to
impossible.
happen. It needs to happen, just like with the creative race or the race theory stuff. Like, it's going on in Tennessee here. They're trying to ban it from being taught in schools,
Right.
But it's
and
not
I
even
am
being
angry
taught in
about it. Well, they're wanting to ban additional stuff. Like they don't want to teach even Martin Luther King Jr. They want to remove all that stuff from history, and that's the thing. You're saying that, whoa, this is way too much. Like what I'm hearing you say, and I don't think you're saying this, but what I'm hearing you say is who is to say what's right and wrong? And that's the thing. There has got to be a line. There has to be a line. The Holocaust happened.
Yes.
Vaccines work. Yes. And for me, I don't want to do business. I don't want to associate myself with companies that are saying otherwise, period.
Well,
as a podcaster.
Well, and here's the thing. I think that's what it boils down to. It's individual decisions. And like
exactly.
Our voices are really, tightly connected to our wallets in the United States.
The ultimate one is like Amazon
and that's
Web
what Neil
Services.
Young did.
Like, do you have Amazon Web Services sift through some of this and like shut shit down? Like, and look, there are obviously lines that have been drawn, right? They shut down kiddie porn websites. They shut down like murder for hire websites. Like
yes.
There are some things that they have shut down.
Now,
and there's a precedent for that.
Let me just say too, because I'm just realizing this, that it's just occurring to me. While I respect the fact that what Neil Young did started this conversation, I do not agree with the ultimatum that he gave Spotify.
What was the ultimatum?
The ultimatum was you either get Joe Rogan or you get Neil Young. So he was telling them if it was, and he didn't have any problem following through with it. But I don't agree with giving ultimatums like that. Now, I like the opportunity to start conversations and saying, let's talk about this. But did it need to have that? Either you have Joe Rogan removed or either you have some kind of a statement released or at least a specific episode, not Joe Rogan as an entire.
I guess the other thing is Neil Young going to go back now that they are going to do something like that? And two, had Spotify never bought Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan was available on all platforms always, would we have the same conversation?
We wouldn't. We definitely would not. If he was still in
still making money based off of these platforms allowing him to say the same thing, and add revenue, and they pay him for listens or whatever.
Because then Neil Young would have to go against Apple. He'd have to go against everybody. Spotify. He can't remove his music from everywhere.
But forget Neil Young for a second. The conversation remains that the distinction. That the decision to allow that conversation to happen on a platform that you monitor, that you benefit from his content being on, you bet your ass that Apple Music and Amazon, whatever, and all these other things would love to have Joe Rogan's podcast back on their shit because he brings people to
what if
the party.
Neil Young is a double agent? What if he's working with Rogan? Oh my God, Reservoir Dogs.
If nothing else, it was a brilliant PR stunt for Neil Young because I'm sure his listens are through the roof now on all the other platforms. He got that.
I love the
spot.
meme. It's like people under 30, like who the shit is
exactly.
Neil Young?
Half of America's like, who's Neil Young?
30 to 60 is like Neil Young's still alive.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, people over 60 is like, what's a podcast?
What's Spotify? Yeah,
yeah.
That's exactly it.
And on that note.
I love you guys. This is a great conversation, and this is the kind of stuff I want to talk about. Like this is the stuff I love talking about mics, but this is the deeper shit that as human beings that
gotta take a stand, man.
Well, it just this is what makes me feel alive. It's like this is human connection.
It's been a great conversation.
It has been,
and it's also interesting. I think it's probably one of the first times that a podcast has been the source of something so controversial, right? I mean, like you've had popular podcasts, but like
it's a great time to be a podcaster.
It is interesting if we round it out here that podcasting was the medium through which this ridiculous conversation took over the world for a week.
That's
it's
what
podcasting.
I'm saying, man.
Amen.
That's what I started the conversation with. I think at the core, we all care about the same thing because this is the podcast club.
Yes.
I think that end of the round. I think that is a fine, fine way to resolve that conversation for today.
I think so.
That was solid. I feel enthused.
I feel drunk.
I feel exhausted, but I also feel satisfied.
I do too. On that note,
yes, thank you for having this discussion with me, guys. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
This podcast was produced by Heartcast Media.